Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's session. And this week, we're going to look at these apps that take a photo of a question and the answer comes rolling out. Now, before we get into the details, we're very happy to be joined by a special guest. His name is Mike Church, and he comes from us from BC. So, Mike, what's your interest in academic integrity? How are you involved, and did you get involved in this?
Well, I work at Simon Fraser University at the Beatty School of Business as an IT administrator, essentially. And so I've been working on the support side of this rather than the teaching side, well, at least up till recently. And a year ago, I just finished my MBA, and I actually started teaching in the middle of my MBA, which is due to an accident. As a result of all of this and a 30-year career here, I've done pretty much everything. I've been student, I've been grad student, undergrad student, teacher, and administrator. So I've kind of seen all sides of this. And I'm also involved a lot with Eric in terms of the academic integrity stuff. As an administrator, I get a lot of requests about academic integrity. How do I run exams? And especially with the COVID, how do we run exams so that they're fairer? Why can't we have these tools that help protect to some degree to stop the students from presumably cheating? And then the administrative issues we have with, legal and so on. There's a lot of things we can't do, even though we want to do them from Central. So I'm kind of involved in all of that. So I have sort of an omni view of most of this stuff as it goes by.
Yes, you mentioned you've been working in this field for like 30 years. Have you seen a change in terms of academic integrity or the tools or how much it happens, or do you see any trends?
Well, it was becoming more of an issue in the last 15, 20 years, I guess. We've had to do things like put cell phone detectors. The real thing that changed was around 2007 or so when the iPhone arrived, and suddenly people had full screen phones that had access to the internet. And then the Pandora's box was opened because it was really hard to manage people. You're not supposed to have your phone, fine, leave your stuff all up at the front, but it was still, people could put little head pieces on people. There was all kinds of things that were starting to happen. And then tutorial companies were coming up, these companies designed to help tutor you, but it's a full package. It was around then that academic integrity became a bigger issue. And now it's electronic. So now we have, trying to do cell phone detectors, which really, they do work, but they kind of don't work. It's, it's not enforceable at all. And then there's just little tricks that we try to do to try to stop it. But clearly it's been on the uptick. And just from talking to students, like we have a lot of co-ops. So I talk to the co-ops, and a lot of their friends do the tutorial companies, and it's a fairly high percentage. I mean, it's just conjecture, but it's a fairly high percentage of the people that use these cheating companies basically to improve their grades. So if you don't use the cheating companies now, you're at a disadvantage.
So I'll suggest now we're going to look at some math apps and see how they go. So I'm going to share the screen first. There's these 3 math apps that are quite well known that students can use to take a picture of a problem. And let's go see how they work. And just to show you the setup, I have here on paper, here, this is just written by my hand, and this is a printout to see how the handwriting recognition works or how bad I write. And so here I have an iPad, and then we'll put the iPad over, and here you see the 3 apps on the iPad, and we'll work with them. And as we work with them, let's just fill out this table.
So Martin, give us a preview.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So let's go check it out. Are you guys familiar with the app?
No.
Well, the first one, PhotoMath, is actually a startup company that wants to show how good they are at AI. And they just used the particular, math solving ability as a way to profile themselves. So they're not really an educational startup, but that's where they sort of thought they could showcase their abilities. And MathWay is the second one. That was bought by Chegg. And the third one we're going to look at is Socratic by Google. So let's roll. So we have 3 apps here. So let's start with the Math app, which is this one. And so what we do is just take a photo and we can expand it. You're supposed to be able to expand it. Yeah, there we go. And we look around it.
So this is PhotoMath?
This is PhotoMath. It's the first one. And there we go. So there you see, it has different options here. So let's go to the intercepts. So let's say you want to know the intercepts. And you click on that one. And so here's the solution all the way written down. And you see these arrows down. You can open them up and it tells you what to do. To find the intercept, substitute the y for 0. It shows you the steps, right? So it tells you what it's doing at each step. So we could go to the next step, swap the sides, divide both sides by 2. So you get rid of that. Write negative 9x as a difference. It just guides you through the whole thing all the way down. And then it gives you the solution right here. So that's pretty detailed. Are you surprised by that, or you think this is pretty standard?
I'm still surprised when I see this stuff because it's like the quantitative genie's out of the bottle, really.
Yeah. So now that was perhaps an easy question. So let's go to the next one in line, which is this one over here. And so let's do that. Now this is a bit more complicated. We have an integral here. And take a photo of that one.
Yeah, it's still formulaic.
Yeah, it's still formulaic. There it goes. Works the same way, all spelled out, intermediate steps in between, substitute x plus 1 for t, and then work with t, go all the way down, and then over here, substitute it back for t again, x plus 1, and then solve it for 3 and 0, put it in, and you get your final solution, 14/3, done in milliseconds. Wow. When I saw this, I was flabbergasted,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never lose your sense of wonder. That's somebody having their exam done for them, if that's your exam.
Okay, now what about even more complicated? And the next one is the one with a sinus. Let's see that one.
Wow. Should also work.
And again, it goes all the way, all done for you with all the intermediate steps. Very sophisticated. Now let's go to the challenge, which is a question about what about you want something that's not directly in the formula. We want the inverse of this function. So let's do that. And as you can see, it's solving the function, but we don't want that function. We want to actually find the inverse. And in the middle here, you can see in the gray area, right in the middle, at the moment, it thinks you want to find the x-intercept, but it offers other ways of dealing with the issue. So now you as a user can interact to find the solution you want. And the fourth one is find the inverse. I'm going to click on that. There we go. So now here at the top, in the middle, you see find the inverse, and then we can show the steps, and it found the inverse of the function. And I know this is grade 11, 12 math in high school. So, now we go even more complicated to the text question. And here you see that it cannot recognize the handwriting, right? Could be the problem or it could be the handwriting. So now I'm going to go to our other sheet and take a picture of the printed version. So because the question is that the problem? And what do you see? We couldn't recognize your problem, right? It's too complicated for it to analyze. So it can't handle text, basically. And so even if we were to give it a more complicated printout that we just did,
it'll just have more problem with it.
It's going to have more of a problem.
You know what? Make it do it anyway. So hopefully
Rigorous.
Its silicon brain explodes.
Yes. Okay, so let's get it. There we go. And the same problem. It wants a formula, basically. Okay, so now we're going to the other one. It's called MathWay, which was a company bought by Chegg. Okay, so how can we help? Take a photo.
Give me the answer. I don't want to work.
So the nice thing about this is it takes a photo of everything. And then I assume I can move it around and I can say what I want. So now imagine having a test in front of you with all the questions.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that would be a nice feature for somebody who wanted to cheat. You just take an entire page and then you don't have to take multiple clicks.
You can just send that page off to the cheating companies as well. Make some money too.
Yeah. Okay. So now it's working and it doesn't know how to answer. So it asks something extra. In this case, it was the first question, which was find the X and Y intercepts, if you recall from the previous one. So that's what we were doing. Okay, and here is the solution. Tap to view the steps. So it's giving us the answer. 5 and 4 are the intercepts here. And now you have to pay extra to get the workout, but it would work the same way as the other one. And so the advantage for students would be that on the other one, they get it for free. And here you have to pay per month extra in the Czech version. Next one, and take a photo again. So we did this one. Let's see. And kabam. Same answer as the other one. I remember 14/3. And I'm assuming you can find the steps again. Let's do a third one. Picture again. It's much more faster that you don't have to lock in at the start. Here it says nothing further could be done. That's a different one. Maybe there's more options here. Evaluate the integral. Nothing further could be done. So this one can't really handle this particular integral versus the other app. Let's go to the next one, which was the inverse of a function. And in the other one, we had to tell it that we were looking for the inverse. So likely we'll need to do that here as well. Yeah, let's do it. And it's asking us what to do with this. The inverse is not there, but there's an option that says more. And there's so many things it can do. There's also a search function. So let's try that. And where do I type the search? Inverse. Find the inverse. Okay, that's handy. And it says, find the inverse. Yes. The chosen topic is not meant for use with this type of problem. But again, it seems that the other app was a bit better at solving problems. So let's go to the last one. And that was this one. It says no math found. Please try again. So it has the same problem that when they don't really see in a formulaic function, they can't handle it. And just to confirm, we'll do the other one. And no math found. Please try again. So it cannot handle the text problems. Now, the last one, Socratic, is kind of interesting because it's a bit different from these two. And let's get our formulas up again. There we go. This kind of works the same as the other one that you take a picture of the entire page and you say go, and boom. And so what is nice is at the top, they have the question, and then they have solve. You can use different programs to solve it. Other apps. So it's more like a search engine into other apps. So let's click on one called PhotoMath. And PhotoMath says it cannot further simplify this. So we'll go back. What about Math Papa step by step? It is asking what do we want to calculate, and it's graphing it for us. Okay, and there we can see in the graph, we can see the intercepts we were looking for, 4 and 5. So it solves it for us. What's nice is they have explainers below, more from the web. So they direct you onwards to other places where you can find further information.
That's very googly.
Yeah, it's very googly. So let's go to the next one. Go.
It makes me think the amazing number of options that they have if it doesn't know what to do with it actually is something you might be able to leverage as an instructor. So even if you have an equation like that, without actually saying you want the inverse of the function, I don't know how the best way to do that would be, but it's interesting to, if you wordify it more, it might add, like this same generation that just wants everything just served up to them. If they have to choose from 22 options, they're going to get confused anyway.
Sometimes the formulas at the bottom here where it says more from the web are actually variations of the same formula. So they're not the exact same formula you gave them. So you actually have to see that there's a difference. There is hope. So let's see if it solves this one. Yeah, it looks more like a search engine here. So it's not as quick and intuitive as the other ones. Maybe Wolfram Alpha. Let's see what they come up with. Okay, so this is a solution by Wolfram, and it also depicts graphically the integral over that area from 0 to 3. So that's nicely done. It gives you the solution. It's a good one here. So basically what Socratic does is it directs you on to other apps, and you have multiple apps that you can test whether or not they found a solution. So it found a solution for our integral from 0 to 3. What about this one with the sign in there? So let's see if it solves that one.
Why wouldn't it?
Well, don't know. Maybe it's more complicated. Now it's only offering one app, which is Wolfram Alpha, that offers a solution. So let's see.
Why would you just then go to Wolfram Alpha?
Gives you additional stuff, right? Additional relevant stuff that might be relevant to your problem.
Yeah.
So if I was a student, this particular Socratic app directs me like a search engine onto various other apps that have the actual solution. So maybe one can handle it and not the other. So let's go to the inverse one. Go. There you have Mathapps again. So let's check that one out. And it solves it well. Mathapps gives you a graph. The problem here is it's not giving us the inverse, right? It's giving us the function itself, where what we want is the inverse. So it's not recognizing the text. And what about Wolfram? It's the same problem. It's just solving the actual function rather than the inverse of the function. On the bottom
And it
here,
doesn't give you the option of doing the inverse function at either Wolfram or the other one.
it's probably somewhere in there maybe, but it's not clear. What it does do though, is it recognizes the word inverse. So now it gives you an explainer what inverse functions are. So we can look at that. Yeah. And so here it's showing you the inverse function of something, but it's not giving you the solution.
Okay, let's go to the word problem.
Go. It's just directing you to the web. There's no solution for it. And the last one, which was Joey, just for completion. And go. It did read it correctly, just doesn't really know how to handle it. So yeah, same problem. It can't handle it. Good. I'm going to stop sharing and we can just chat with each other about these apps.
All right, well, let me immediately share some observations.
Go ahead.
If I wanted to cheat, PhotoMath is the clear winner. If I wanted to just access a bunch of resources around the concept, I would go to Socrates, and I don't see the value added of the MathWay app. I would use one or the other. If I just wanted a quick answer, it would be PhotoMath, and that app was able to answer most quickly and most accurately all the formulaic questions. Wasn't able to handle the word questions, even the simple one. And then Socrates gave you maybe too much information, but gave you a whole bunch of resources that you could use. So if you probably wanted to learn and your teacher wasn't explaining things well to you and you wanted to explore a variety of different resources for understanding the concept, Socrates was probably your go-to app. And MathWay, I don't exactly know why you would use that other than you don't know about PhotoMath and you want to cheat.
Yeah, Socratic and PhotoMath are the winners as far as usefulness. So Mike, what is your reaction? Just your instant reaction when you saw this?
It's parsing the text well enough to have it go into an actual math app, which is fine, and which didn't surprise me that it got the text but couldn't do any nuance. But it scares me because have you guys heard of GPT-3 yet?
No, what's that?
GPT-3 is it is a data set from the OpenAI project, openai.org, I think it is. I've actually asked for access to the data set. You have to make a request because it's like for research. So I did it through SFU because there's a bunch of people that want to do sentiment analysis and other types of analyses for their research. So I'm really curious about it. The GPT data sets went through basically all these web pages and just indexed them all. And some of them had priority, like Wikipedia pages would be considered more authoritative than blog pages or Facebook pages or whatever. So, but basically it just a big giant machine learning AI thing, which just scoops up all these pages. And the latest data set is 2 magnitudes bigger than the previous. So it's now indexed, I think it's in the billions. It's like 200 billion web pages. And so basically what you can do with GPT-3 is with its machine learning algorithm, it can translate stuff automatically, can actually tease meaning out of things. So the GPT-3 data set might be able to look at the final 2 problems and actually do something about it. So GPT-3 is foolable as well, but you can ask the GPT-3 data set things like, what is larger? And it will say the automobile is larger than the toaster. Well, that's more nuanced than what is 3x plus 2y minus 0. What's the y-intercept of that? I mean, so one is very clearly parsable, throw it into an engine and the engine calculates a bunch of things for you. The other one is it knows how big a car is relative to a toaster. So that's coming. So I guess my point is that even though right now it's doing answers 4 and 5 will probably be solvable fairly soon.
Yeah, so countermeasures you might take that work now in the near future may no longer work.
I would say it's short term. It's like passwords. The machines are getting so fast that an 8-digit password is now laughable. I just registered for, I think, Adobe Max or something, and they used a password and they said, your password is guessable in 3 hours.
Wow. Oh,
Like, just if somebody had the database and they downloaded the database and ran and started hacking it, by today's standards, it would take 3 hours to just brute force crack my password open. So that's 8 digits.
so if there were
So
students
or
with
eight
access to that kind of data
characters.
and they had the skill set you just mentioned, eventually there could be some that have privileged access to that kind of knowledge.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think again, we're going back to this thing about they probably don't care enough. And if anybody was, they'd probably be doing a venture project or a business to try to make money out of it. So it's going to be an application. It's going to be either a cheating app or it's going to be just an open app that will do. You can just copy and paste stuff into it and it will just barf out an answer. So people are doing these kind of tools right now. It's frightening and awesome at the same time. But so it's, watch this channel in 2 years and we'll be talking about how do we defeat that.
So I mean, it's pretty obvious how it could be abused, but to start off, many of these were developed probably with some legitimate use in mind. How do you see that, and how could teachers use this, and if at all?
Well, I'm not sure about legitimate use. I'm thinking from the perspective of the defensive coordinator. I coordinate the defense. I don't do the offense. But I don't know. There's so many cool things that can come out of this. But machine learning and AI is going to be mainstream in a few years for anyone. Like, anyone's going to be able to build an app that uses this stuff. It's just inevitable. Like, there's a game engine called Unity that I'm partial to. I do game programming on the side, and they have whole machine learning stuff to make. If you're making a game, then the enemies are almost unbeatable, and they'll learn to be unbeatable. And then you just dial it back so that it's a fun game again. But I mean,
That's like the Moriarty character on the holodeck in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, and it learns. So it just can get better to the point where it can stomp you, and then you just, as a programmer, as a developer, you want to keep them in the. We're really straying here, but there's this where people get powerful and then they get the game's too easy. Then you have to make it hard for them, but it can't be too hard. And then as they progress, they go up this narrow channel of it's too hard, it's too easy, it's too hard, it's too easy. So you have to, as a programmer or as a game designer, you have to keep them in that window. And so this is actually helping people create games like that, because you can dumb down the AI, which is perfectly capable of destroying you at any moment. But you're just under the illusion that you're getting better than it, and then it's tougher. And so anyway, so these are the kind of tools that are going to be available to us in the future. It will apply to any kind of soft learning, right? Well, not soft, I don't know how to describe it, but more nuanced learning. Questions like these could be answered. Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea is that you're asking it questions that maybe we didn't even think to ask big data sets, right? So it's a good thing in general. But I'm sure
I'm waiting for the app to spit back. Stupid question. A better question would have been.
Yeah. Aside from the obvious typos in the question, the instructor threw in 2 stupid, useless points, and the answer is, of course, 50% profit. Duh.
Yeah, but that. I do see that all technology can have good and bad use, right? And good use of this is, like, if I had to think of high school teachers, I mean, the worst part is having to do all the grading, right? It's very hour intensive, effort intensive, and these sort of AI things could really help students learn if they were put to good use in support of the teacher, as opposed to just sort of making sure students don't actually learn and just outsource everything. So, for example, you could have a situation.
I don't know. You're fishing for a beautiful salmon. I think you're just pulling up a boot. I don't think.
Well, I'm more practical. Sorry, I'm going to jump in. I'm more practical about that. I would say that it would be a tool that would help you flag perhaps an exam. Let's say it's an open exam, that's like an open question. Then the AI would look and flag like something that looked like it was either cheating, or flag some parts, like basically as an assistant to you, but not as the final word. You still look at it. It will highlight parts that you maybe glossed over. So that's how I see it being practically used. But to just replace you as a marker, I don't think that would be wise.
No, I mean, there's lots of resources. My wife's a math teacher. She's got lots of practice questions for students, and they're in textbooks or they're in PDFs, they're handouts. All the answers are there. I'm just saying, what is the value added for legitimate purposes? And I don't see much value added for legitimate purposes. I don't know why somebody would need to take a picture of a calculus problem and be able to get the solution that way, because there's lots of practice questions that are out there that have very detailed solutions.
But what I could imagine is, let's say the teacher gives homework in the future, the student uploads their answer, but they're stuck. And then the system is able to give them hints so they can get going again without necessarily giving the answer, but knowing where the student is failing and direct them to further resources. So I think that kind of assistance would be good from these kind of apps.
Do those,
If we're talking about
do
the
the apps
future.
have those features?
Well, Mike, you were mentioning that they can recognize things, so then you can build in the intelligence that they could do that.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that I can easily see an entire set of questions. For instance, a dynamic test that would ask a question like the first one. So A, it would come up with a quadratic equation or something, and you blow it. So it gives you a second one that it generated on its own. It's not part of a test bank. It just generates it for you. Once you get through that basic, polynomial, whatever, refactoring, whatever it is, then you go to the next question, which is an integral, or you go to the next question and you fail that one. Well, then it throws a new one at you, completely different one, same idea, and you work your way through. This is as a teaching aid, as a tutorial thing. It can throw 20 questions at you. Like when I was doing my finance course not too long ago, I wish
But
I'd
it's
had more
not giving
questions.
you questions, it's answering your questions.
No, I know. We're talking about the future. I'm talking about a legitimate use of an app like this for tutorial
It's
purposes.
not
for
an app
training
like this.
purposes,
You're
to
describing
learn.
another app.
Yeah, we are. We're
We're talking about
we're
the
going
future.
off on
The
a
future.
tangent and imagining the possibilities.
Now, another question is, how could you use AI to facilitate education?
Yeah,
And-
that's kind of what we're doing.
And that's what we're talking about. But these
Yes.
specific apps, I don't know
No,
what
I
the
agree with
value
you.
added is.
Yeah, we're getting back on the main track, which is
Yeah.
what's the value add. And I kind
And
of
the
agree. These
world is
things are
truly
custom.
messed up when I'm the one who has to put us back on track. I will tell you that, Mike.
True. So when Eric steps into the genius bar, we now switch roles. I'm the guy trying to keep him.
Yes. So let's get back to the apps, as Eric said. Is there any legitimate use, Mike? What's your thoughts on that?
I really don't see any legitimate use for it. If the only legitimate use could be that if you want more questions of the same, or maybe you don't like the textbook answer, because one thing I found is that the textbook answer in both my finance, marketing, and another book have wrong answers in the back, and that pissed me off so much. And it was more than just
legitimate
one
answer
wrong
is double
answer.
checking an answer from the back of your book to make sure that you've got a
Yeah, but if
second
you're-
opinion.
Yeah, but if you're soft on a question, you're not quite sure that you got it right. Now you're second guessing. Well, am I right, or is the answer wrong? You have to have faith that the answer is going to be right. And as I understand, that a lot of textbooks are just given to PhD students or TAs to sort of, here's the question, go to the answer and get the answers for me. I don't think the writers of the textbooks in all cases are actually writing out and double checking their answers. Errors do seem to be slipping in more. Some conversations
I guess a
I've
follow-up
had
question is
work gets delegated.
if you're a teacher, does the grade mean anything anymore for math questions that can be answered by these apps?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if you give a test in person and they're not using the app, right? Then these sorts of questions, if they're part of your learning goals, they make sense. Socrates has some potential clear value-added contributions, because it sends me to different places. So it would be really good if they sent me to places like Khan Academy that gave me lecturettes on this topic. And it doesn't quite do that, but it gets very close to doing that. And I could certainly see the app in a subsequent generation doing that. My question is, how easily can these apps for cheating purposes be integrated into wearable technology so that even in person, so for instance, if I don't have Google glasses anymore. What's the state of the art, glasses, where you could just look at a test question and it connects to one of these apps and it displays, the answer for you to view on your glasses. Is that like something that's easily done at this point?
There's nothing there. Now, Google dropped their Google Glass. They are talking about a new generation of glasses that are not as obtrusive, and they just look like normal glasses, and it's displayed on the actual glass. And,
well, how about like a watch that sends the app, the response to an earpiece?
I just looked it up. It is possible. People comment that it was possible, at least, to put PhotoMath on a smartwatch.
oh wow.
Yeah.
But I think
So
it's even easier though, because you can have like a microphone and like, okay, forget, you know what I mean? Like this, the standard sort of store stuff you can get, that you can hide the microphone in your ear or whatever, and you can just ask the question of somebody on a cell phone call during your exam and just say, let me see, 2x plus 3y, oh, intercept, huh? Let me think about that. And then and then you just go along, and and somebody's narrating what you're supposed to write. I mean, how hard would that be? It would be trivial to cheat. It's just how much energy are you going to put into it, right?
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I mean, you can totally see that, and it would defeat almost everything that we have: lockdown browsers, eye tracking. I mean, some of them look at your voice and unusual things and will flag it so that you go back and, yeah, every time you did the question, you like mumbled something, and then 20 seconds afterward, you entered your answer every single time. So that's something you could use as, so that justifies these lockdown browsers, right? But it's like an arms race. It's crazy. And then even though you've got them dead to rights, will it stand up to an appeal? And are you willing to go through mountains of appeals? Or is this a new place where you have to set a precedent and go after them, and then after a while people just say, oh, okay, I can't fight it, and they're watching us with this Proctor software, so I should probably not try it? I don't know, but that's kind of where we're at.
Eric, you once showed a movie, Idiocracy. You see some links with that movie, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're just outsourcing our thinking to other people and to technology. And I think that that's the problem. I think the more general problem is that we're so focused on results that the process doesn't really matter that much. People just want, quick solutions.
The students nowadays have grown up with the internet blasting in their face as long as they've known it. They're fish swimming in a sea of data. And so they're just born filters. They filter everything. And so they don't see the need to hold any local data in their brain at all, really. I can just look it up. But as we talked about before, that's what learning is. Learning is having that at the ready, but they just think you can search for it. So we're fighting against a mentality of, oh, I can just look it up. So if there's an easy solution, I'll just take that.
I think ultimately the solution is about framing things in an appropriate way and framing knowledge in a particular way so that cheating isn't as attractive an option. Because if the only reason you go to school is to get a credential, then cheating might be something you consider. But if you believe that you're going to school in order to learn and to become a better person and a better thinker, then the only way that you could accomplish those goals is by doing the work yourself.
It's hard to be inspirational in maybe a macroeconomics or microeconomics class if somebody just doesn't want to know. But if you can sort of try to show the wonder in what it is that you're trying to teach, and if you're into the subject, you're going to presumably be enthusiastic about it.
Many students don't care about the wonder because they care about the results. And then we do things in schools that play into that. We do things like curving grades, which makes the results more important than the process. We treat students like customers, where we're just trying to get the most out of them with the least possible input. And students, maybe they don't understand that explicitly, but they certainly understand the nature of the relationship, or they certainly feel the nature of the relationship they have with their teachers. So if we're just really interested in the results and not the process and not how much students learn, then how could we expect students to care about how much they learn? Yeah. And I think ultimately that's what we need to do. It's sort of an attitudinal change. We could sort of curb behaviors and try and control them. But ultimately, we need to get back to a point where certain things are valued, and the things that are valued just can't be bought. Martin and I teach strategy from time to time. I just delivered a unit on the resource-based view of the firm. And the idea is that firms have competitive advantages because they control some sort of asset or resource that other firms don't have that creates value. And then the question is, can you buy that? And the answer is probably you can't buy that. You need to build it, and you need to do a lot of things properly. And then you arrive at things like a superior brand name or loyal employees or the sort of strong tie that Apple has with its users. That's not something that could be sold, because if it could be sold, it wouldn't be the source of a competitive advantage. It wouldn't be any advantage. So somehow we got to get back to the point where we understand that the focus should be on doing things correctly, doing things appropriately, learning stuff, upgrading your skills. That's what you're getting. That's what your reward is. But we have to begin by starting to reward students for that, and not just rewarding for getting the answer right.
For me, it's a matter of trying to get them to understand how to get the answers is what you need to focus on. Like when I started my MBA, I was told right at the start that we all graduate. If you do the work, you'll all graduate. So stop thinking about the marks and start thinking about strategic thinking, and start thinking about what they're trying to get at, what the points are they're trying to make, and tying these things across courses. So something you hear in economics, think about how that applies to strategy. And you should be thinking about that and upgrading your skills and upgrading your thinking, rather than what's my GPA? What percentage am I in the class? Am I in the 7th out of the 37 in my cohort? Like, that's the wrong thing to think about. It's the learning and the process. And so I totally focused on that, and that completely transformed my MBA. My MBA was really fun. It was a pain in the butt too, of course, because it was a lot of work and people, you have to work with people. And I try to take that into my classes and just tell them, look, this stuff is really actually cool. Like, just focus on the cool stuff in this. I mean, I'm teaching a kind of a fun course, so it's easy. You know, more quant courses are harder, but if you can sort of get that idea across, and if we could focus more on that, and the fact that, you know, you can see that somebody's really getting it, whereas some of them just couldn't be bothered. Like, and that actually brings me to one point I was going to mention about exams. If we want to stop cheating in exams, there's one way we can do it. It's just labor intensive. We just do oral exams, because oral exams will eliminate, and it's painful, but you can tell in a minute if somebody knows or doesn't know the answer. They're looking at the screen. You say, okay, tell me how you would solve this equation. Here's the equation. How would you solve? What would you do? Tell me. Right?
Yeah.
And somebody who knows, oh no, I just. So, and I was told that you can take a 3-hour exam and do it as an oral exam in 30 minutes. But the problem is it's a 1-on-1 versus a 1-on-30. So.
And then it just comes to a question of whether you want to allocate resources in order to do that. Because if universities had the resources to make classes small enough, instructors would be able to assess that way. But they'd also, I'd say that instructors also need to be properly trained, so that they could do that fairly. And they probably need to have implicit bias training or subconscious bias training as well when they do those things. So maybe that needs to be a priority for schools, where we focus on quality rather than we focus on revenues. And unfortunately, universities aren't being funded so well by governments these days. So we rely on funds from students. And that means we need to be efficient. And we also sometimes give students what they want rather than what they need.
What you guys are saying makes me think that whether universities are capable in the race of technological innovation to keep up with everything that's AI related, that may be a lost battle down the road, you know, or a battle that's hard to keep up with. And therefore, maybe we do need a fundamental shift to really communicating better with our students, making them want to learn and focusing on the skills as opposed to just getting that grade at the end.
You know what, there's some things that are scalable, and I would argue that a good university education probably isn't scalable. Now, whether people care about a good university education or just a degree is a completely other thing. But when we're looking at the future threats to business schools or university programs from online programs, then what we have is a very strong interaction between teachers and students, where we're not trying to develop scalable solutions, but we're trying to develop customized solutions based upon our understanding of the needs of particular students or particular groups of students. And that's what we can do. But we're not doing that because we're more focused on the existential threat of declining revenues than the existential threat of becoming obsolete if everybody thinks about education simply as knowing factoids and gaining a credential. Both are serious existential threats. If somebody wanted to give a math type problem with a math type exam with formulaic questions, and they were worried about apps like this, I would advise them to frame things in terms of word problems for the moment. If people wanted to get at the underlying causes of why people might be induced to use tools like this, I would ask them to consider the messaging that they give students with respect to what are the most important products that they're going to receive from the course, and how the results are not that important, but rather understanding how to approach problems and what questions to ask and how to solve ambiguous problems. Simply by going directly to the answer in the most efficient way, quite often you miss most of the value. So I think that messaging needs to be repeated. And unfortunately, individual instructors can't do it themselves. It needs to be supported by the entire university, and it starts with recruitment. And many schools recruit students by telling them what the 4-year graduation rate is and what the degree can do for them. It would be much better to focus on all the cool stuff that they're going to learn and all the new knowledge and all the skills they're going to develop that are going to help them become happier, more productive people later in life. That's what I hope that we can do. So I'm not that concerned about these apps right now, because I think with proper safeguards, they don't really help students cheat so efficiently and so effectively. But I'm more concerned about how apps like this outsource learning and short circuit the learning process in the process for students. And somehow we need to message to students differently so that they don't see these apps as particularly useful to them. That's what I would say. Most of that is actually not talking to teachers, but talking to administrators and policymakers.
My thoughts are kind of all over the place on this, but I think if I was to really put it in a nutshell, at the instructional skills workshop that I took 2 years ago, I think, they talked about learning outcomes, and it got annoying after a while. But really, it comes down to these little marbles of knowledge that you're going to give to the students, each little chunk nugget of value. And so currently, I think we've just got used to doing exams a certain way. We're trying to convert from writing stuff in person and teaching in person to teaching online. And I think if you're going to do it right, you have to think about redoing everything. Like, for instance, instead of having one big mega exam at the end or a big midterm and a big final, break it into smaller pieces and have all the learning outcomes softer, like not just be quant, like if you have quant questions, put them in words like this to defeat apps like this, but focus on as much as you possibly can on them being able to have some intuition about the question. Yeah. And you're going to have to re-engineer your course, I think is what I'm saying. It's going to be work, and a lot of people don't like to do a lot of work. So I think there's going to be a lot of resistance to it. But I think the ones that will be the most effective, that won't need to worry about these apps as much, are the people that are trying to restructure how they teach. And as long as the university has that resource in place to help them, maybe they could help.
See, Mike, I don't know whether I completely agree with you. I think part of it is getting back to basic. When I went to university, we focused much more on the process. Teachers didn't choose assignments that were easy to grade. They assigned us term papers, and we needed to go to a library, and we needed to read, and we needed to think. That process was very valuable. I'm talking to students about my midterm coming up. And the message I'm saying is, I hope when you see the midterm, you're going to say, oh boy, here's the opportunity for me to think about some really cool stuff, as opposed to, he didn't tell me the answer to this question. What am I going to present him?
I think that's kind of where I'm going, Eric. I agree with you. I think if the more you can make your students actually think and make them come up with the answer. Like, I remember one final that one of our colleagues gave in a course similar to mine. It was a single paragraph. The entire exam was a paragraph. And it was just, you're the CIO of a so-and-so company that's blah, 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 blah. What do you do? And like that encompassed the entire course in a nutshell. And they wrote like maniacs for 3 hours.
That's right.
But that's the kind of thing that's pulling the nuggets
But that's
out
what
of your head.
That's what university education used to be like.
Yeah.
And it's no longer. And that's because we're trying to process people in a scalable model and put them through as quickly as possible. You know, at SFU, for our grad programs, it used to be that every grad student had to write an MBA research paper, a mini thesis. And that was incredibly time consuming, but the process was incredibly valuable because it was a close relationship between a student and an instructor. And the student needed to think about things, couldn't get a good grade based upon their eloquence or their quick thinking or their ability to deliver a fine presentation, but actually required them to think deeply about what they've learned and to produce something that's meaningful for them and to get connected with their instructor. So we're trying to create scalable solutions to manage resource constraints or maybe generate as much profit as we can, as opposed to focusing on, you know, how best to educate students. So there's a lot of blame to go all around about why students think that they're just buying grades and buying degrees rather than having the opportunity to develop as a person. And I just want to rant about one last thing, and there's actually a direct tie to these apps. I hate scaffolding. I think scaffolding is a solution that a lot of people subscribe. I just had a conversation with a senior colleague who said, well, you're assigning Harvard Business Review articles to fourth-year students, but have you taught them how to read it? The problem that I'm seeing with my students, the biggest change, is they can't connect the dots. They have deep knowledge, but if I ask them to link two concepts or link a concept to a real application, they can't do it, even if the connections are really simple. And I think that's because we're spoon feeding answers to students because we think we're helping them, but we're actually hurting them because we're depriving them of the aha moment. Oh, I see how everything's connected. I see how the system works. We're not giving them the ability to do that for themselves. And so the argument that, you know, like one of these app programs, right, are okay because they just show all the steps. Well, we need the students to understand the steps themselves and maybe figure out their own steps in order to solve the problem. And that's the skill that the students don't have. And that's the skill that's going to bite them when they graduate. And that's the skill that employers are complaining that our students don't have. They just can't connect anything to each other. And that's because we're scaffolding everything for them and we're giving them the answers. We should be giving them questions. We should be giving them problems and guiding them so that they develop appropriate ways of solving it.
Questions that don't require a direct path to the answer, right? Or that require some context. So you can use this pattern to solve the problem, but because
you need to recognize
context, that pattern makes no sense.
You recognize that pattern, right? The patterns don't even have to be very complicated.
Yeah.
But if you don't
apply in all
pattern,
senses or whatever, right?
Well, you know the old adage, right? If you give a man fish, he has fish for a day. If you teach the ability to fish, and they have fish for a lifetime, that's what we need to be doing. And that's why cheating apps like this are so popular.
It's an arms race. So I think that the apps in the future are going to do even more devastating things to learning, frankly. And I think people are going to be lazier. So I just agree that their students are going to be lazier. I think that it comes from administration. Maybe it comes from loosening a little bit some of the grading norms, maybe for higher level courses too, like for 300 and 400 level courses, allowing a shift maybe toward more bimodal distributions, like have more A's and maybe more C's for people that have lamed out, to be able to teach based on the nuances that they've learned in the course. So it's a really complicated chain because the instructor has to be teaching that way in hopefully a kind of a Socratic kind of method. Like I found that using discussion topics every week about something specific, the students have said, I can't wait for the next discussion because they get heated. And then I bring up their discussion points and say, let's talk about this thing or that thing or this thing. And that got them thinking about the stuff, not just, oh yeah, AI is really bad, it's going to take all our jobs, and then just leave it at that. Like, no, what jobs? What sectors? And where's the value in teaching that? If teaching will be removed by AI bots, why? Why do you think? And then other students would chime in and go, no way, no, teachers provide a nuance that an online teaching thing can't do. And I'm like, okay, well, that's useful to know. And then we went on to other subjects. But at the end of these courses, whenever they have lots of this debate, they go, man, I really love this course because blah, 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 we talked about this. And it shows up in their answers.
Yeah.
But I know my bias is from my course, which is kind of a luxury course, right? Like they get to do presentations on fun topics. They're not forced to do tricky questions like, strategy. You can focus them to do a really tough problem. They're looking forward to showing off what they've learned. If you can gear your teaching to make them do that with whatever tools you can, that's going to defeat these tools in the end. You can't do an arms race. It has to be about the learning, and they have to want to learn.
Are we needing a paradigm shift, or are we needing to go back to the future? Paradigm shift would be a completely different way of thinking about education, or back to the future would be going back to some basics that have developed some pretty good critical thinkers in the past. We could look at, what traditional liberal arts colleges did to produce good thinkers. And we've certainly moved away from that. That's the interesting question. Some people argue that we have to completely rethink education and do away with grades and marks entirely. I'm probably a back to the future kind of guy, and it's where I think we need to get to the basics of how we teach students and how we teach students to think and how we give them feedback so that they can learn from their experiences and their mistakes and become resilient and not just be anxious and timid and entitled, which is kind of what we do when we focus on results and we treat them as customers.
At the end of my MBA, we did this presentation on Gen Z or Gen Z, depending on which country you come from, and what drives them, what motivates them. It was for a game company, Kabam, and they wanted to, how do we retain them? How do we whatever? But one of the key things that came out of it, and Gen Zs are the ones that are in the classrooms now, they want instant feedback, and you can call them prima donnas or whatever you want, but that's just what they know. Again, they're this generation of swimmers in an information stream. They want feedback. So if you give them good feedback and you allow them to give feedback, if your feedback loop is tight with the students, they will want to learn more. They will want to presumably cheat less, and they're going to do well. But you have to interact with this particular generation.